WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. Please click the live stream tab or watch us on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Dr. Cassandra Wanzo, your show host of Mind Matters. For the next hour, we are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG _talk _radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guest and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Good evening again and welcome to Mind Matters, where we discuss relevant mental health issues. I'm your host, Dr. Wanzo. I'm a psychiatrist and I've been practicing in Atlanta for the past 30 years. Our co-host is Norman Carter Jr. He's a retired Philadelphia police corporal. He's written a book that's very relevant to these times. The title is The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon for purchase. He also hosts his own show on WCEG. It's a very excellent show called Issues and Answers on Monday at 4 p.m. Hi, Norm.
Hello there. How are you, Doctor?
Welcome to our first show of 2022. Our topic this evening is pandemic fatigue. Again, pandemic fatigue. Yesterday, the U.S. set a world record for daily new COVID cases. 1.35 million new COVID cases in one day. This is the highest daily total for any country in the world. In the same day, the number of hospitalized COVID-19 patients also hit an all-time high. Greater than 136,000 people hospitalized with COVID-19. The surge in cases has disrupted schools, disrupted holiday gatherings, disrupted transportation. Over the holiday, thousands and thousands of flights were canceled. It's closed businesses, restaurants, stores, banks. My hairstylist had COVID over the holidays, so I could get my hair done. It's swamped hospitals. Hospitals are stressed all over the country, some on the verge of collapse. They're involved in patient rationing due to the staff shortages that aren't able to provide the type of care that they're able to provide. They're turning people away who really need to get treatment. It's disrupted garbage collections. It's disrupted UPS and FedEx deliveries, all from staff shortages as the Omicron variant spreads. A relative of mine said, "I am so sick of this virus." People are tired. People are tired of being cooped up due to restrictions on indoor gatherings. People are tired of wearing masks. People are tired of physical distancing. People are tired of being away from family and friends. People are fed up with the new normal. Speaking of the new normal, scientists are now saying that COVID is here to stay that it will become endemic, just like the cold. It's taking an emotional toll as well. People are suffering more and more from anxiety and depression. For the first time in my career as a psychiatrist in my private practice, I had to schedule a Sunday clinic. I had so many people from Saturday that I couldn't accommodate. I had to set up a Sunday clinic. That's the first time I have ever had to do that. Of course, it was all virtual, but Saturday and Sunday, I had clinic. People are experiencing a type of burnout that experts are calling pandemic fatigue. What are the signs of pandemic fatigue? Being excessively tired in spite of getting adequate rest. But I must say that fatigue is also a sign of COVID itself. Another sign of pandemic fatigue is just feeling overwhelmed, wanting to isolate from family and friends, and having lack of motivation or purpose. Pandemic fatigue. And your thoughts, Norm, about what's been going on with the pandemic?
Oh, I am fervently listening to you, and yeah, I did some research on this, and I mean, you just touched on a few, but there's feeling of hopelessness, not sleeping properly, eating or sleeping upset, and it's not only affected the things that you mentioned, but I went to Kroger's last week. And was amazed that almost the entire vegetable section was empty. Empty.
Yes.
And the aisles where it normally have water and other things and picnic supplies, they're half stocked, and it's just it's affecting everybody in every strata, and it's, as you said, it's something that we're going to have to become accustomed to living with. But that means we also have to become accustomed to the restrictions we were going to have to live under.
Now, in terms of holiday disruptions, I'm going to share my situation, and I asked my sister if it's okay to talk about it. So for Christmas, in my family, Christmas is a very big deal. It's a family time. We always get together every Christmas. It's a big family time. So my sister was scheduled to come that Friday, but that Monday she had not been feeling well. And so I said, why don't you go get tested? Well, she got tested on Wednesday, got a result back on Thursday, and she was positive for COVID. So she couldn't come Friday. I actually started crying on the phone. I mean, it really hurt because there were so many plans. I guess I can tell our age. I'm 70, my sister's 69. We had never spent a Christmas apart in 69 years, never. So like I said, I started, crying on the phone. It was just very emotional, for me. We ended up having Christmas, but the way we did it, everyone who came to the house had to have one of the rapid tests, before they could come, for Christmas. That's kind of down having have everybody, get a test, but that's the only way, I felt to, keep everybody, safe, in that situation. So my sister, she's a substitute teacher, and she learned that the teacher that she had covered for the past week was out with COVID. She got no notification. So here she is in the classroom with the same students, and the students were still there, no quarantine, and she's in the environment. And so I don't understand, it seems like there should be some responsibility as far as quarantining students, notifying, the teacher coming in, what's going on. So that's how she got it. So whether she has Delta Omicron, I'm not sure. But what happened, they keep saying how mild Omicron is. I don't know if she had Delta Omicron, but all I know is, like, for 2 weeks, she had been extremely fatigued, lying on the couch, not eating, had lost quite a bit of weight. So I was really worried and concerned. So I had her to get a pulse oximeter, which measures your oxygen saturation. You want it normal to be like 95 to 100. Hers was 93, and critical, as you know, is like 92. And so I was so worried. I mean, I would check on her like every 3 to 4 hours to see, what her readings were, because I was worried because she was there, by herself, alone. Finally, after 2 weeks of not getting better, I suggested that she go to the emergency room. This is after 2 weeks of symptoms. So she called the emergency room. They told her, don't come. Can you believe they told her not to come? How do they know what her situation is or how sick she is?
Right.
So my other sister was here in Atlanta. So once my other sister got back home to Wisconsin, she and her boyfriend took my sister to the emergency room. Sure enough, she had pneumonia in both lungs. So if she hadn't gone to get treatment, who knows what would have happened? I mean, I had all kind of dreams and flashbacks about, what could happen, to her, like just being there by herself. But, fortunately, well, the hospital, first of all, was full, so they had no beds. And they ended up sending her back home. I was shocked. I said, they're sending you home? She said, yes, they sent her home on antibiotics. So that was 2 weeks. So now she's at 3 weeks. Monday was 3 weeks since she's had symptoms. And so finally now she's starting to show improvement. When I spoke to her before the show, her oxygen saturation is now up to 99%. Hallelujah. Whew. So I don't know whether it's Omicron or COVID, but this is something, whatever type you have to take it seriously. So that's how it disrupted, like I said, my holiday. But the whole time it was really, even though it was Christmas, I was really sad because I said we had never, ever spent a Christmas apart in 69 years. So it was really tough. So I don't know how it's, your experiences, how it's affected your family at all.
Well, what I wanted to say one thing, and the trap that the public falls into is people saying that, or professionals saying that Omicron is mild, and that's a relative thing.
Exactly.
There was some celebrity who just contracted Omicron recently, and he was diagnosed as mild, but basically he said this is the worst he's ever felt in his life. He's on the road to recovery, but mild can be debilitating. And a lot of people think it's going to be like a 3-day cold and go away, and that's not true.
3 weeks. My sister's been sick for 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Not able to do anything for 3 weeks. So, and who knows how long, it's going to go on. But fortunately, she's gotten better. And people can have long COVID even from mild symptoms. You can get the long COVID from that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and the fatigue comes in. I think where this has been going on 2 years, and one of the things that brought to mind when you brought this topic up is that we as human beings are a communal species, and it's in our DNA to be associated and around other people, and it's part of our makeup. But on the other hand, this disease is something new for this generation. I would almost say it's something like, if we can go back maybe 10 or 15,000 years ago, when probably people were suffering from the common cold, which we call the common cold now. People were dying from the common cold, many generations ago. And now we have this really, the common cold is also a COVID derivative. Exactly. And now we have this new, or it's new to us, virus, COVID-19, which is probably affecting humanity the same way that the original COVID virus affected humanity tens of thousands of years ago.
Wow. And then, they keep talking about other variants, whether there's some validity to it or not. There's some people talking about the Deltacron, which is a combination of Delta and Omicron. And so some people are saying it's valid. Some people are saying it's not. And then they discovered another strain in France. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, well, the virus, these viruses, people have to realize they're living beings. They're not human beings, but they're living organisms that adapt in order to survive. And so, it's similar to there's certain diseases that we know that if people don't take, we'll say penicillin or whatever antibiotic, if you don't take the full series of the antibiotic, what you do is you may kill a certain portion of that disease,
Exactly.
but there are other parts of it that adapt to that and become stronger and resistant to that particular antibiotic. So that's what we have here now with COVID.
Right. So they said with the Delta, you had maybe 10 mutations. And what they're discovering with Omicron is it has like over 50 mutations. And that's what makes it so transmissible, because there's so many mutations that it's hard for your body to recognize all the different mutations. So that's why it's so contagious. I think Fauci said today that everybody is going to be exposed to it at some point.
And the other part we have today is we have what I call some malevolent people who add to our angst and our isolation by putting out false information that confuses people, and therefore you don't know whether to isolate yourself or what to do, because there's so much misinformation that's going out there, and unfortunately that misinformation is killing people.
Exactly. So I've taken, in terms of protecting myself, there was a clinic during the week that, well, initially it used to be, in person, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then when the first surge, the COVID happened, it was all telepsychiatry. And then about a year ago, I started going back into the clinic every Tuesday. Well, as of December, middle end of December, I sent them email saying that because of whatever the underlying conditions I have and the high infectivity of the Omicron, that I feel it's risky for me to go into the office. So at this point, I am no longer going into the clinic at all. So everything, I'm doing 100% telepsychiatry. I am not seeing anybody in person at all. That's how I'm protecting myself. And when I go out, I'm double masking. I double mask when I go out.
I'll tell you something funny, and this goes to leadership. Not funny, but odd and profound. We're here in Georgia, and I can go to Kroger's, I can go to Publix, I can go to Walmart, and nearly everybody is wearing a mask of some type.
Okay.
And lately, I have been having to go to Louisville, Kentucky, and they have two political leaders who really poke fun at the COVID virus and the seriousness of it. And every store I go into in the Louisville, Kentucky area, hardly anyone is wearing a mask.
What? Wow.
And that comes from the leadership at the top. And what people don't realize is that when you have a large section of a population that ignores the health guidelines, what that does is it serves as fertile ground for these variants that are coming about. Where if all of us took the vaccine and guarded ourselves, mask, cleanliness, distancing ourselves, we wouldn't have all these variants that are coming out now.
Exactly. So around this time last year, I had a membership at a health club. And so when they reopened it and I went back into the gym, do you know I was the only person wearing a mask? And these are the people who are working out in the gym and the people who work there. These people working out in the gym, I was the only one wearing a mask. So I went the first time. And then the second time when that happened, I canceled my gym membership because they said that their policy is at the discretion of the member. If they want to wear a mask or the staff, they had no guidelines or policy. This is a gym. People working at the gym, they had no mask policy.
I just went to Office Max up here in Loganville. I had to purchase some items, and the gentleman behind the counter, again, I'm masked and very careful. He's behind the counter at Office Max, coughing into his hand. No mask. I was shocked. Fortunately, I mean, there's a barrier there, and I really didn't touch anything that he had to touch because the items that I had, he could just they were big items. He just had to scan them, and he didn't have to touch them. But my goodness, these are the people who are spreading the disease.
Yes.
And everybody needs a job. I get that, but when you purposely ignore simple guidelines like wearing a mask, especially you're coughing,
Wow.
you're coughing into your hand, which is, I mean, that's as outdated. How many years have they told us not to cough in your hand?
Exactly. Exactly.
That type of nonsense is going on, and that's why this disease is spreading. And yes, I know that people are we're sort of burdened by this fatigue, uh, this pandemic fatigue, but we just still have to be cautious.
Yes, yes. And take protection, like you said, wear masks. And then also, it's the type of mask. Some people wear these little bandanas or cloth masks, and they're finding that those are not effective, that the only ones that are effective are the KN95. And after that would be the surgical mask. But you still see people wearing these like bandanas and cloth masks.
Yeah, I've been wearing KN95 and N95 masks, I guess, for the past year and a half, exclusively. Initially, they were hard to get.
Right.
But you can get them now from Amazon.
That's where I ordered mine through Amazon. Right. And I ordered a face shield. I had a face shield, but I'd gone on some trip and I left it. It was at the airport. And so I got another face shield. That's another thing about traveling. I mean, the cruise ships to me are perfect incubators for the virus.
Yes.
Yet I know people who are going on cruises. I can't even imagine going on cruises.
Yeah, they just had a couple of cruise ships that were denied access to certain ports because of the prevalence of COVID-19 on the cruise ships. And these are people allegedly who just felt like they had to get out, that they had to do something, that they were overwhelmed by the isolation they've been in for almost 2 years. But who's not overwhelmed? I'll tell you. We have 5,527,903 people in the world, and in the United States, 842,141 as of today, who don't feel isolated, who don't feel the need to get out because they're dead.
Wow.
And that type of
repeat that number again. What was that statistic again?
Okay, this is from the world. There are 5,527,903 dead.
Wow.
United States, 842,141 dead. And to bring this a little bit more home for all of us, in Georgia, we've had a total of 21,837. Wisconsin, 1,244. And my home state, Pennsylvania, 28,525.
Wow.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah, but isolation is temporary, death is permanent.
Exactly. Wow. I know for me, right, that's, I take at least one international trip every year, and I haven't had it since 2019 was the last time I took an international trip. But before that, every year I have at least one international trip and many other trips. But I haven't, been able to do that for 2 years in a row. And I'm used to like going to plays and shows and things like that. For a while they had shut them down, but I know they've reopened them with certain restrictions. You have to be vaccinated and show your card. In the fall, I went to a show at the Alliance, and someone went with me, and she didn't have her card. They would not let her in. They would not let her in the performance. So yeah, at the Alliance Theater, because she didn't have her card. They were very strict with that, and I'm glad they would not, let her in. I don't know about airlines. To me, it seems like they could be more restrictive, but to me, that's another situation where you can, easily
Yeah.
transmit the virus.
Well, their bottom line is cash flow.
Of course.
Yeah. Their
Mhm.
bottom line is cash flow, although they're having problems with staffing
Mhm.
because of COVID. And I just look at as the statistics that we just have here, and the people who seek to remain, who are steadfastly against getting vaccinated, don't they look at these figures and say, not only look at these figures, but look at themselves, look at their families, look at the people who depend upon them,
Mhm.
and look at the finality that they're dealing with.
Mhm.
I mean, are you so politically ignorant that you are willing to sacrifice the safety and security of your children for nonsensical behavior? I don't get it. And unfortunately, we've had some political leaders, both here and in Great Britain, who seem to not take this seriously. And there are millions of people who follow these people, and that's a shame. So what do we do about it?
I think to a certain extent, there's a lot of denial that goes on. Until I think, because I have a friend who had refused to get vaccinated, was staunchly against it, until two close relatives died in her family. And then at that point, she did get vaccinated. But before that, she was strongly against it. But when she had two close members of her family that died, at that point, she didn't get vaccinated.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the recommendations for people who feel isolated. One of them that I really like is give yourself some TLC. Give yourself time off and connect with others. I mean, we have the ability to connect with people via phone. Now we have Zoom and FaceTime and all these other things, social media, online classes, even outdoor visits with family and friends. That's something that we've done in our family. And have some sort of routine. And so we have before us ways of not to feel so isolated. And you just have to take advantage of them, because we need to be in this for the long haul.
Yes, the long haul.
And I hear a lot about children. And I hear a lot of parents say, complaining that they don't want their child going to school with masks and all sorts of things. I remember something I heard years ago, and that is children are probably the most adaptable beings on this earth. They will adapt to anything. And if that requires going to school with masks, if they have the parental support and the proper parental guidance, they will accept that. But when you have parents who are either on the fence about it or steadfastly against it, then children will pick that up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was seeing like in Chicago, the teachers refused to go into the classroom. But I guess they've worked out some kind of agreement now because of whatever the policy was. I don't know all the details, but I know that there was something between the Mayor Lightfoot and the teachers union in Chicago.
Yeah. Mayor Lightfoot now has COVID.
Yes, she does. Yes.
Not funny, but I think what happened with the teachers union is that they gave in to public pressure, because their reasoning for not being in classrooms people shot holes in that,
Mhm.
and they really weren't in as much. The way the school environment is set up, it's probably one of the safest environments that they can be in.
Mhm.
So I think that public outrage really affected the teachers unions and getting them back into the fold.
Welcome, Mr. Paul. Wow,
Welcome.
stranger. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my WCEG family. Happy New Year, Doc. Happy New Year, Norm, Penny.
Happy New Year.
Seems like it's been a year since I seen you people.
Yes, it does.
Hey, the last time we saw you, you were in shirt sleeves. What happened?
And that has got me so stressed and burnt out.
Yeah, so we've been talking about pandemic fatigue. People being tired, cooped up, tired of masks, just tired. What are any thoughts
Listen,
that you have? Mm-hmm.
I had pandemic fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
I had Black people fatigue. I had working fatigue.
Okay.
I literally, this has been the most busiest period of my career these last 3 years. And it's crazy. Don't think I'm any way, shape, or form being a little weird when I say this, but this pandemic have been a blessing on one hand and a crazy curse on the other.
Mm-hmm.
With deep respect for people who lost their lives, but I've never been more busy.
And
And
I don't know if you heard, but the same thing, me too. I had to have a Sunday clinic because I had so many people from Saturday. I had to see people on Sunday too. So
it's crazy. And traveling in and out of town, work related, it's just gotten to the point where I'm just amazed that it's not, I don't want to be a mental issue, but I have beginning to suffer physical fatigue where just having 5 minutes to be able to breathe without having to respond or deal with somebody is becoming a major factor for me. I just want to eventually take a sabbatical where I can just have 3 months to myself without having to worry about anything or anybody.
I was going to ask you about that because you're active law enforcement and your job forces you to have to interact with people. So that has to weigh on you. And also, how does that affect staffing for you?
Especially now that I'm in a contractor role and that I work with multiple agencies as well as private clients, staffing is at a critical level now. I travel quite a bit on different assignments, and it's not easy to deal with a lot of demands of clients, especially when you're used to working with a team. Especially in executive protection assignments, at the minimum, we have a 6-man team, especially when we're doing high profile clients and events. Well, we recently had to deal with a situation in Brunswick where only 2 of us were available. Still have these major parameters we got to cover, but instead of 6 bodies, we have 2.
Because of the COVID or what?
Very much. Two of the agents came down with COVID. 2 were unavailable because they were taking care of spouses with COVID.
Wow.
And it was really difficult because we still had the same work responsibilities with limited manpower.
So someone asked about your status. They want to know if you were vaxxed.
I'm sorry?
Someone wanted to know about your status. They wanted to know if you were vaccinated. Someone just asked.
Oh, yes, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm in line to take the booster. I haven't gotten it yet simply because I can't keep or commit to appointments to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm vaccinated, got my booster in November.
Yeah, so I am vaccinated. The booster I have yet to take. And it's not because I'm against it, it's because just time management has been critical.
They're talking about possibly needing a 4th shot, a fourth booster. And in fact, Israel has started doing that. Israel is giving, they're starting to give people their fourth shot now. So that's something that they say that we may need to have as well.
I was always against mandates and enforcing in the US because now you're going to create that, how should I say, that group of individuals who will refuse to do anything on the names of their rights. Wow. And that would be an excuse for some to commit situations like January 6th. And I believe common sense among adults, especially who are looking at the mortality rate, it wouldn't be a matter of mandating. It's a matter of like, hey, we making the time. We having the resources to make it happen. I just can't believe people who are anti-vaxxers, but at the same time, they are dying at, they're 94%, if I'm not mistaken, of those who are dying from COVID.
Yes.
You know,
that makes no sense.
I have to butt in because I hear this. I don't want to put an adjective in front of it, but I hear this talk about vaccine mandates, and people are against it because it's a challenge to their rights. There is no one on this panel, and there's no adult who's listening to this broadcast who was not mandated to take certain vaccines when they entered school. There is no adult who wasn't mandated to take certain inoculations when they travel to certain foreign countries, particularly our military, because now there's a movement in the military. Certain military people are suing the government, and it's politically motivated, not to take the vaccines. And I served in the military, and I know that we were absolutely mandated to take certain vaccines, certain inoculations, because that contributed to our ability to be combat ready. And when you don't do that, not only do you endanger yourselves, but you endanger the people who are around you. So I just don't understand this this childish, and it is childish, resistance to vaccine mandates.
You know what? I'm sorry, Norm.
No, go ahead.
I agree with you. And even more so, I'm amazed. Now, all of us as children back in the day, and we're all adults of a certain age, we all took those inoculations for school, smallpox, polio. What I don't understand, how these new age parents are refusing to have their child inoculated, but they themselves were inoculated. And they turned out fine.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
forget COVID and a pandemic. I'm thinking that just though there have been recently deaths in the last few years of children who died because their parents refused to have them inoculated at a young age, or they contracted diseases that were easily controlled, or they should have been immune to.
Measles.
That's crazy.
The mumps.
Yes.
Especially when the parents themselves were inoculated and nothing happened to you. You're living a full, healthy life because of you took your immunizations.
Right.
I remember
that speaks to what Norm was talking about, all the misinformation and disinformation that's out there.
Yeah, that's the scary part. What's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene. But
who unlocked the door?
But they have platforms to put out all this misinformation, and they are convincing people who you would think will have common sense to not take the vaccine, but yet at the same time, they're dying due to their ignorance. How do we stop all the? I think the misinformation is even more deadly than the side effects from the vaccine.
Of course.
If all things were fair, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she didn't have all her money, she would be one of Dr. Wanzo's patients.
Wow.
She's a piece of work. As long as I say a piece of work. Yeah.
But that piece of work is costing people their lives.
Exactly. Wow.
Well, you know, and a lot of, I hate to like call names, but some people are what they are. We have people who are cowards, like the former president, who took the vaccine, but didn't want his constituents to know. So
Wow.
consequently, he had taken the vaccine, but his followers, many of whom are among these 842,141 dead.
Oh, what's the name the guy that ran for office that died? African American guy.
Herman Cain.
Herman Cain.
Yeah. Herman Cain.
And I was about to say that. You would think that Black America, yes, I'm talking directly to you, Black America. Those African Americans who are anti-vaxxers for their own reasons, you would think after seeing what took place with Herman Cain, and at the beginning of the pandemic, there was rumors in our community that Black people can't get it because we're naturally immune.
Right.
And we believed that. So many of us thought it was a joke until we became the largest minority group that was dying from COVID. And then next thing you know, oh, we're not getting the care we deserve, and it's being racist. The system is trying to be doing this to us. How did the system do something to you that we already convinced each other we didn't have to worry about?
Yeah, and remember Herman Cain's favorite line that he always used was, "We're not stupid."
Oh, really? Okay.
That was his favorite line.
Wow.
And he went to that convention, skinning and grinning, shuffling.
Say shuffling.
And look,
it was
where
a minstrel show, huh?
Yes, he was grinning for the man. And you know what? Did Donald Trump go to his funeral?
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Nope.
No, he didn't.
I'm just saying.
No, he didn't.
And it was so ironic. It was irony in the most absolute, definite way with Herman Cain, because he publicly paraded around without a mask.
Yes.
And reinforced it at every opportunity. Don't let them tell you got to wear a mask.
Yeah.
You know, he forget we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
And let's not forget about the African American preacher, evangelical preacher, who spoke in the Rose Garden for Donald Trump. Immediately caught COVID.
Did he
immediately.
Die? Wow. Did he die? I don't.
I know he was hospitalized. I'm not sure whether he died or not.
Okay.
But he was a staunch Trump advocate, and he wound up in the seriously ill in the hospital.
Yeah, I don't remember their names, but I've seen like several people who are anti-vaccine and mask staunch who died. I've seen several of them lately who have died.
What's the young lady name? I mean, the other staunch Trump supporter. Was it Candace Owen?
Oh
yes, yes, and she's still singing her song. Yeah.
I don't understand her logic.
Yeah,
that one is more dangerous to me than any Klansman I've ever came across.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't understand this woman on any level. And she's so venomous and so self-destructive.
Yes.
Why do we give her a platform?
Well, I tried to ignore her.
She has money behind her from the Republican Party. And she is also, who right now has no regard for Black people at all. Sorry. And she's the Judas goat.
Wow.
She's the Judas goat. And you see, when she has her gatherings, the only people she has there are Black people.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah?
Yeah. She's a Judas goat.
Wow.
That's dangerous because it reinforces the ignorance we have against vaccination. I can understand those who have suspicions and issues with the U.S. government, because we all know Uncle Sam is not to be trusted. I understand what took place in Tuskegee. I understand forced abortions during the 30s and the 20s and 30s, or shall I say, sterilizations. What I don't understand, this epidemic started in 2019, and it's still raging.
Yeah. Also keep in mind, and this is another part of the misinformation, the Tuskegee experiment had nothing to do with the federal government. Had nothing to do with the federal government.
Yeah.
That was put on by a state agency and Tuskegee University, which is a Black university.
No way.
Yes, read the
There's
history.
no way HBCU has something to do with deliberately infecting Black men with syphilis and watching them die in that.
Well, one thing to clarify, they didn't inject them. They just withheld treatment. They were never injected. Treatment was
withheld. Are you kidding me?
Right. Treatment was withheld to see what the natural course of syphilis was without treatment. There was treatment available, but the study involved seeing what happened through the whole course and the progression of syphilis without giving them treatment, even though treatment was available.
You know, there's a famous statement that said, evil thrives when good men don't take action.
Yep.
Are you telling me, see, this is new to me, that our Black scholars, part of an HBCU that has historic ties, knew, collaborated, and failed to protect those of us who were used as guinea pigs.
Correct.
That's crazy.
Guinea pig, truly guinea pig, yeah.
Yep. And knew about it. And this went on for what, about 50 years? It went on for quite a while.
Wow. So when we start talking about pandemic fatigue, imagine, looking back in the history, not only of this country and the world, but those who stood by. Say, for instance, if you wanted to commit genocide, but done with your hands dirty, you just withhold treatment.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm speechless. I've never knew of a Tuskegee connection other than the general location and where it took place.
Well, that's part of this whole process of, when we talk about rewriting history or suppressing certain historical facts. If you look for it, it's there. But what this does is, it's anything that helps to cripple African Americans flourishes. And that's something that cripples us because it makes us reticent to take advantage of health treatments and opportunities that are out there for us that would benefit us. But when you have this type of misinformation that's going out nationwide, and people, I mean, there are generations of people. There are people who have lived and died who did not know this, and that's sad. That is just plain sad, and it's deadly sad.
Wow. I'm speechless.
Hey, we speak life into the community.
Yes.
Here at WCEG.
Yes. Someone sent me a statistic earlier about law enforcement deaths, and according to what this statistic was showing, like last year, that the #1 cause of death among law enforcement was COVID.
You know what's funny? I can say this again. Those who came in this career, it's just like those who joined the military. You signed up for this. You didn't expect this, but you signed up for it. You didn't want this, but you signed up for it. Anytime you interacting with people in a public vicinity, you can't control the variables and the risk. Unfortunately, COVID created a pandemic, but we're still considered essential workers.
Yep.
You can't say, I don't want to interact with any type of people at any turn because you're afraid of COVID.
Mm.
That kind of takes away from your oath you made for public safety.
I want to mention one thing, Paul, about public safety is that something that's not talked about is that police officers and firemen for a while, hepatitis ran rampant.
Yes.
Because police officers and firemen and your EMS didn't wear gloves when they treated people who were sick or
Yes.
bleeding. They did everything was hands on, and hepatitis, deadly hepatitis, was rampant for a while until now. You see police officers. I mean, they're issued gloves to wear, and firemen and people who are involved in interacting with people are wearing gloves. So these are the type of hazards that we run into.
And one of the things was scared me the most was airborne pathogens. Now, I'm rich, I always carry gloves when I had to interact with somebody. And ironically enough, I'll be honest with you, I used to steal them from the EMS, you know, because they had the best gloves. Those blue leather gloves, I don't know who made them, but they were the best in the world for dealing. They were strong. They didn't tear easy. Unlike the cheap little, the vinyl little ones that they were excellent gloves. But airborne pathogens, all of these guys who you dealing with people, they in your face, they breathing on you. You had those who already were ill you had to interact with. And hepatitis was very much real. I agree with you. But man, nothing used to get me when somebody already looked like they 1 foot in the grave. And you got to interact, and they couldn't stop coughing and hacking and packing and you couldn't back off. And back then, well, hell, even until COVID, there was really no widespread use of masks. Still, sometime when I have these guys, and they can't stop coughing and breathing and I'm starting thinking of every airborne disease that can matter. And I'm already backing off. People think you safe in a building. Oh, the building had AC unit. No, AC units circulate germs throughout a building.
Yes. Yep.
And not every place had HEPA filters, nor are they set up and designed to stop any kind of infection. That's the reason when you go in hospitals like freezers, ice boxes, to control infection rates. Well, the average place you walk around, and not even do a restaurant or something like that, and don't go to DMV, back in the day, you had 500 people there. Man, you don't know who got what.
Absolutely.
And the thing about the Omicron, they're saying is just even a 5-minute exposure is enough to transmit it. Just a 5-minute exposure.
Wow. 5 minutes.
5 minutes is enough.
My fatigue sometimes really gets to the point where I know when my immune system is suffering, because more than just getting tired, I find myself getting like, you know how you feel a cold coming on, and you just like the sniffles or something like that. When I've been running too hard, and I find even something that's a simple cold, I quickly realize that the vitamin C is low, the zinc is low, the magnesium, potassium, everything that I need to keep my immune system working at optimal minutes. I pretty much deleted myself, which leaving me open for any kind of virus or cold or whatever.
Exactly.
So, I try to. I'm not a medicator. I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm not one of them people got like 50 different pills for everything under the sun. But I do know my zinc, my vitamin C, my potassium, my magnesium, it's a daily must that I do have.
So what you're doing, Paul, and that's something I want to do in the next show, is focus more on ways to cope and deal with the pandemic fatigue. But one of the number one ways to cope is self-care. And that's what you're talking about. Eating right, getting enough sleep, making sure, like you said, you're taking the right vitamins. That's one of the main things you can do to deal with this pandemic fatigue is self-care. And we can go, more into all the different ways of dealing with pandemic fatigue when we do the next show. But self-care is the most important thing that we can do, is self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I find also, Doc? I love the team that I work with. One of the other ways to mitigate fatigue, even when it hits critical levels, is your attitude adjustment.
Yes,
The more negativity creates more stress and fatigue than you would imagine.
Yes.
But when you look at an assignment or you look at what you got to work with versus, your resources, I mean, when you tackle it with the attitude, it's like, you know what, we got this. Even when it's going to be a task, it makes it so much easier. It's like your body saying, okay, listen, you know what, we're going to be okay.
Exactly.
And mentally accepting whatever's in front of you and reacting and going about your task with like, okay, you know what, I'm in a good place. I'm amazed how many people can't do that.
Exactly.
That's what gets me sometimes.
And that's another important way to cope is maintaining hope. And that's what you're doing and setting positive affirmations. So that's what you've covered in that, setting hope and maintaining positive affirmations. Those are ways to deal and cope with pandemic fatigue.
You're well into your next program.
Yes.
Wow.
Because I know this has been kind of a downer, like all,
good stuff.
Fatigue. But the next time we'll talk more, how can we cope with it? What can we do to not succumb to this pandemic fatigue? What are ways to cope? And then those are some of the things we will deal with in the next show, how to cope with pandemic fatigue.
Then I got a question for you, Doc. Now that your practice is overflowing with people with pandemic fatigue, what's the common denominator for the majority of those?
Well, financial stressors because of whatever may be going on, like in terms of their job, not being able to work, just feeling anxious and depressed. It's more like anxiety, depression based on everything that's going on with this whole new situation, new normal, being depressed and anxious about that. Like I said, primarily job and economics, foundation.
Wow. Now I got a question for Norm. My brother.
Yes, sir.
From an intellectual point of view of somebody who's been there and done that, enjoying retirement, do you think that at this point that this country needs to shut down to the extent that we focus on eradication and healthy? Because I'm getting the impression we're now putting profit over public safety in terms of health. The other day, there's a new variant coming out called Delta, if I'm not mistaken.
Deltacron, they're talking about the combination of Delta and Omicron, they're calling it Deltacron.
So Norm, do you think we need to shut down, do a partial shutdown, or even almost complete?
Well, we're in the midst of what happens when you shut down. Now, I was just talking earlier about going to the store. When you say shut down, that means going to the stores and the shelves are empty. That means people aren't getting fed. So we don't need a shutdown. We just need people to be smart. And if people are smart and compassionate, we can get through this.
And the other thing, Paul, they're saying that this virus is here to stay. There's no eliminating or eradicating it. It's here to stay. It's going to be part of us, just like the cold is. So it's going to be endemic. It's going to be part of all the diseases that we have. There's no eradicating it. It's here to stay, is what they're saying now. Yeah.
If that's the case, would the current survivors, be part of, will we create a gene pool now where even if it stays with us, it would no longer be as deadly as it is?
Yes.
Will we naturally develop resistance?
Right, it won't be as deadly, right? But it'll be here, it'll still be here. But then those who have, several risk factors, will be more likely to be susceptible depending on what your risk factors are, underlying causes that you have. So But they said it's
So,
here to stay.
so if I'm not mistaken, that's almost like saying Earth is called natural selection.
Okay.
It's basically, and really, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
In every life cycle, every life form, the strongest survive. You
Right.
develop those genes and attributes to help you survive, but those who can't, and those who cannot, and not even have to be compromised immune system, just you will not, for whatever reason, your genes are not strong enough, and it's like a weeding out process.
Right. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we'll have to continue this in 2 weeks. So tune in 2 weeks when we continue with Pandemic Fatigue Part 2. Thank you for all our guests and hosts. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was absolutely wonderful.
Right. So in 2 weeks, we'll continue this